back, and we're moving into our first conversation for this morning, catching up on all things Cuba. We're joined at this time by Minister Counselor for the Embassy of Cuba in Belize, Orestes Hernandez.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes, you mentioned my name with a proper pronunciation.
See?
Sometimes I get it right, not all the time.
Which I appreciate. Thank you for having me.
Thank you too. And you know, it's such a great time, I think, for us to be able to expand our conversation from local issues to what's happening beyond our borders as well. And one that caught Belizeans' attention quite a bit was your recent tornado in Cuba.
Yes, I mean, for the first time in more than 40 years, we've been experiencing that kind of atmospheric event.
Yeah.
Which is something very rare. Actually, Cuba has been affected for many years with the hurricanes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Cuba is in the middle of everything. So we experience like maybe 6 or 7 hurricanes every year as an average, right? But an event like this one is the first time, and in the middle of the city. And it took just 15 minutes, more than 21 kilometers in a very crowded place. So 3 municipalities were affected.
Wow.
I mean, we had more than 1,000 something houses collapsed. Some totally and some partial, but more than 2,030 something people affected.
Wow.
In the middle of the night. I mean, it was at 8:21 p.m. and it took just 15 minutes. So, I mean, it was a terrible event.
Yeah.
Something that even though that we have experienced a lot of hurricane and natural events like that one, even though that we have had a very wide and comprehensive civil defense program, so we have experienced that we can evacuate more than 2 million people in less than 2 hours. But it is because we know that hurricanes are coming.
Yeah.
But an event like this one, so we didn't expect it.
Yeah. Was there any warning? Was anybody aware?
No, the
that
only warning was like there was something like this kind of natural event or winds that we would be facing this afternoon or this evening, but nothing like this. So it was really a very difficult and terrible moment. And there were 3 municipalities. Actually, where I live, it's like 300 meters when the place it took, but it didn't affect my family, but 3 blocks from my family, they were affected.
Yeah.
So it's something very rare. So you have seen in the social media how has it been.
Yeah.
But
it was fairly strong. It was an F4.
A4,
tornado.
yes, yeah. And actually, this is something new for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. First time?
First time in more than 45 years. So the last one was more than that. It was in 1940 something. Ooh. So it's something. Actually, I haven't heard that you have experienced that kind of situation here.
No, I hope we never do either.
No, I hope that, but I mean, nobody knows. I mean, this current times has been experiencing this kind of as a result of those climate change and so. But fortunately, since the very beginning of the event, and I have to say that with a very humble opinion. So the Cuban people has been accustomed just to give others solidarity. So I mean, since that time it was at 8 something, like around 11, I mean, people began to mobilize. I mean, from different municipalities and different provinces, and I have to say that in almost like a week after, the 99% of the power has been reestablished. Wow. So imagine, I mean, an event like this one with winds more than 300 kilometers per hour. Yeah. So I mean, everything almost was destroyed. Yeah. But after a week, the 99% of the power has been established. So there is no people living in the streets, which is something important. Yeah. Yeah. So if you have seen in the social media, many houses has been
wiped out.
Yes, collapsed. Yeah. So a lot of families. But our people has been experiencing this kind of solidarity. But not only in Cuba, and this is one of the reasons I'm here, because Cuba has been receiving since the very beginning a lot of solidarity with many countries, including Belize. I have to say that the highest authorities of Belize, just hours after that, I mean, very early in the morning the other day, the ambassador received calls from the Prime Minister, asking how can we do something for Cuba, and then they've been paying attention to that, and In Cuba, you know that around maybe 40 or 50 Belizeans studying medicine. We have received reports from the embassy in Cuba, the Belizean embassy in Cuba, but Ambassador Lou Burns, who has been developing an important role down there. So a student from Belize has also mobilized with the Cuban people. They've been going to the place where everything has been happening, so they've been helping. This is something that we need to appreciate, and this is the most important reason why I drove from Belmopan to here, just to express our gratitude to the Belizean people, to the Belizean government and institutions that has been expressing through calls and emails their solidarity with my people and my country.
You know, Cuba has had its share of, and as you said, because you're in that hurricane pathway, you have quite an efficient mobilization system and even recovery system. But something like this, no one was prepared for.
Yes, nothing.
So what has it been like after looking at the extent of the damage and figuring out how these people will rebuild their lives? 1 week later, there's electricity, that's great, but you have homes, you have loss of all property.
Okay, the government in Cuba is always in the front line of everything. I mean, not only the civil society, but the government itself. So that the defense system that I have mentioned has been built through the years, institution for, every part of the country, including that kind of construction issues. At the very beginning, the president, our president Miguel Díaz-Canel, was in the front line just trying to organize everything. Most of the resources are coming from other provinces just to give to the people affected all of the materials that they would need. But since the beginning, different institutions like the University of Havana, they have donated different buildings that they've been using for different
shelters.
Yes, but permanent shelters still, temporary shelters till they can build that. So it means that they will be having new homes, temporary homes. See, this is the pathway. So this is on the south of Havana, 21 kilometers in less than 15 minutes. And those areas down there, 3 different municipalities are the most crowded one in Havana. This is all Havana down there, but very close. Yes, see? It's, so we are experiencing different options for those people.
Look at the
Yesterday, I talked to my daughter. I have a daughter who lives in Havana now. She's working at the university. And she said that it is amazing how people have been mobilizing to find places for those guys to live during their.
How many people have been displaced?
Around 2,000 people.
Okay.
2,000 something, 2,000 people.
Is there loss of life?
4 till now. 6 till yesterday. And just the same night, there were 4 people that died just during the event. But there were like 170 that they were damaged in any. They received injuries in different levels. 2 of them died, I think, yesterday or the day before yesterday. So 6 people have died for that situation. Taking into account that for the surprise, 6 lives is 1 life is important, but
the damage could have been much worse.
Yes.
Cuba, as I've never had the pleasure of visiting.
It is up to you, buddy.
If I have to,
I can provide you with a visa. You can, and it is very easy. Let me tell you.
If I have to swim there, I'll get there, though. That's for sure.
Not only to swim. If you wanna visit a great country, you gotta visit Cuba.
I must do it. It's
sorry about that, but I gotta say that.
No.
That's my role.
Yes.
Yes.
But I'm made to understand from everybody who's gone that it's a beautiful place, and it has a lot of historic buildings. Have any of the historic buildings been damaged by the?
No, fortunately, the pathway of the tornado was like maybe 3 or 4 kilometers from the old Havana site, which is the most colonial and ancient town. Right? Fortunately not. But I have to say, in 2 of those municipalities, especially in Guanabacoa and Regla, which is on the other side of the bay of Havana, they are very old cities. Guanabacoa and Regla are very important. I think during the 30s of the last century, people from different places come and stay, and there are important buildings that have been damaged. Not as it should be, if they have possible, by the old Havana, but in that place there are a couple of churches, important ones, very historical ones, has been affected, but not as a total collapse. So it means that we can rebuild it, and then we can work on that.
What is the spirit of the Cuban people in the face of this? Because as you said, it's not something that they expected.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a hurricane that they're used to. It's not probably an earthquake that they've probably experienced before. What is the spirit of the Cuban people?
I cannot speak on behalf of those who have been affected, because I haven't had that experience. But my daughter, who has been the closest one that has been down there, she said that people even in their mental situation, they haven't recovered yet. So imagine that you lose everything in 15 minutes. Wow. So there are kids, there are elderly people that have been affected. They are really affected in terms of what they have lost, and also in terms of what they have experienced. But the spirit of solidarity is, sometimes you don't have a shelter, but you have someone around you that, and hundreds of Cuban artists has been going down there. So they have suspended their shows and their thing, and they've been there in the street, just showing and sharing with people, even till late. And I see those beautiful scars have been affected.
Yeah.
So it means that the spirit is, it's a combination of sentiments.
Yeah.
So you've been experiencing that, but at the same time you have your own people. I've been checking the social media every day. It is amazing how people said, listen, we need water and we need this, but the most important thing that we have you here with us. So people have been surrounding them. There is an important psychologist in Cuba, Professor Calviño, and then he went there with a group of psychologists. They've been sharing with different families, and then he wrote something which is amazing, because we could see in their faces that they were suffering, but at the same time they didn't feel alone, which is another important thing in this kind of situation.
Wow, yeah. What about relief efforts? Is there a way that people can help when people see the extent of the damage? I'm sure they want.
Yes, you mean from outside?
Yeah,
yes.
from outside.
Yes,
yeah.
there is first of all, we are accepting donations from all over the world.
The embassy as well.
Yes,
yeah.
we have expressed our priorities.
Yeah.
Basically in roof and in water tanks and something. But anyone that wants to donate something, can be sent to Cuba according to the regulations or the opportunity of the option. For example, you don't have direct flight from Belize.
Yeah.
So if you want to send something from Belize, you gotta take into account that you gotta put it in a plane, and then.
Yeah.
So Cuban cannot afford that kind of expenses. So people that want to donate something, we have our government has planned like a bank account.
Yeah.
In our website, you can find information about that, where you can donate that. This is something that we actually, I have to say that many people have been approached to do, because they want to do that. So it means that we have that bank account, but if someone wants to donate something, we know and experience in different countries. In Belize, there are many people that have been organizing that have been put together everything, and they want to do something like donate something. So it means that different ways, depending on the circumstances. But in any case, if someone wants to have that kind of attitude, they can call us at the embassy, 610-1595, and then we can address it, how to do it and how to help. But in any case, we most appreciate is all of expression of solidarity from different institutions.
What is that like from your end, from the embassy's end? When something happens in your home country, we don't get the level of exposure to news beyond Belize as we'd hope. And you find Belizeans reaching out and calling and asking how to support. What is that like from your end to see the interest and the empathy that people share with the Cuban people?
I have to say that this is nothing new. Yeah. So this is something that we have experienced in many levels.
Yeah.
From
the support.
Yes, the support and the solidarity from the institutional levels to the roots, right? Yesterday there was someone who lived in Corozal. I don't remember, not his name, but his hometown, which is a small village. And they said, can we go to the embassy to do something? So what can we do? Because they think at the same time that we've been affected as well. So then after appreciate that amid the court, then we express our gratitude, and then we explain him. It's a 70-something guy. I mean, it's an old person.
Yeah.
Because he remembered that one of his grandson was graduated in Cuba in 1980 something, and he said, he didn't pay anything for that help, so I want to
help out.
Return
to
it.
help, to return that. So we feel very comfortable.
Yeah.
We've been expressing that. Yesterday I talked to one of our radio stations in Havana, and I was expressing this. I mean, people that have been affected, they didn't even know that, guys from all over the world, including that person in Corozal, I don't remember the village. It's a very small village, has been expressing their solidarity. And this is important. In the case of the Cuban people, this kind of expression is very important.
Yeah.
You know, as you talk, I'm getting goosebumps because I was thinking and comparing. Belize is having differences with one of our neighbors. And I remember them having a natural disaster, it was a volcano, I believe, that erupted that killed some people. And I remember Belizeans we're very compassionate people. And we, in fact, organized to send assistance to them. And I was thinking, here it is that is the way we've done it to somebody who is probably considered as a foe. And when it comes to Cuba, who we consider as a brother and a friend, that as you gave that anecdote of the gentleman who wants to help, that it really shows that Belizeans, we're good people, just like the Cuban people, and I guess that's where we meet in the middle. My question is in terms of, there are other people though who are not as friendly to the Cubans as the Belizeans might be, or other persons, who might see this as an opportunity that Cuba is vulnerable. We just saw an interview with a gentleman who said this is the worst he's seen in 53 or 58 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he says at the end, I trust the revolution. Could you talk to us about some of the challenges that might arise because some people who are not as friendly to Cuba might take this as an opportunity to somehow try to attack or criticize Cuba for something? You know the way the international community is.
Of course. I have to say that the majority of the expression that we have received from different countries, worldwide, has been in positive way. Even from those countries that might be, in terms of politics, not enemies, but the history of the relation has not been like this. Even though from the U.S. people, from the U.S. civil society, we've been receiving that. I have to say that, but on my capacity, I've been working with the U.S. desk in my country for more than 30 years. So I know a little bit about the U.S. Yeah. I've been living in that country for more than 4 years when I was at the United Nations. So people from the United States, even though politicians have been expressing that, but there is still an elite that consider that they can manage everything as they were the owner of the world. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yes, yes.
I have to, let me just bring an experience on that, which is this is not a slogan, this is nothing that I want to say about that government or something. We received an information that there were a group of Americans from the East Coast, and they began to make a collection, and they began to collect money to be sent to Cuba in an account bank. After a week or after 3 days, they were receiving a lot of money, so they received a communication from the State Department saying, listen, you cannot send that to Cuba because Cuba is considered a so and so and so. So it's a criminal action. If you do that kind of thing, it's because you don't think like a human being. So you cannot, sorry for saying that, you cannot ask God if you cannot give others. So it's a hypocrisy that in the world that we live on.
So they were blocked from sending them.
Yes, they were blocked that. So imagine that. From people like this, there is no ideology here. So we are talking about people affected by a tornado.
Compassion.
Yeah, compassion. Belizeans know what compassion is.
Yeah.
So it means that there is still forces around the world that they don't want others just to give solidarity. So people make their own conclusions about that. Anyhow, on the other side of the coin, we have been receiving a lot of expression of solidarity, not only material ones, but that kind of expression that we really appreciate.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you know, one of the things I wanted to ask, because if you look at what's happening in the rest of the region as well, we see what's happening with Venezuela, and there's been quite a lot of talk since we're talking U.S. policy about what this potentially means for the future of relations with countries like Venezuela and Cuba. Mm-hmm. How much is that a part of what, let me just ask, in terms of your landscape of the embassy here in Belize, how closely are you monitoring the situation and the potential impacts it may have for subsequent actions in Cuba?
What situation?
The situation in Venezuela and where they're getting support, not getting support, whether the U.S. will...
Okay, in terms of, I mean, as an embassy, we monitor everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, not only what is happening in the region, but what is happening here in Belize, what is happening in Belize and its neighbor and mm-hmm. everything. But I have to say that during the last summit of the Latin American and Caribbean countries that took place in Havana, I don't remember what it was like 3 or 4 years ago. So the most important goal that we got there is that the region declare Latin America and the Caribbean a zone of peace, mm-hmm. which means that we need to live in peace. To be what we want to be, independent of how you want to be, or how you want to live in your country, or how I want to be in my country, right? So, having said that, watching and monitoring what is happening in the region, which is we are almost in a very threat to have a war in the region, to have an invasion, a military action in the region, is something that every single human being should be watching and trying to prevent it. Yeah. Yes, right? So I think that Belize should be very worried about that, as Cuba is. Mm-hmm. This is on one hand. On the other hand is that it is difficult to understand that we are living in the 21st century and there is still governments and countries that want to address or want to order and want to say how you have to live, which is the way that you have to. Cuba has been experiencing that. Not in the last 60 years, because sometimes people think that the situation with the United States began with Fidel Castro. In 20-something, the president of the United States was thinking just how can we get Cuba to the Union? So it's something that is more than 100 years. Mm-hmm. So if Fidel Castro was not responsible for that, come on, it's a situation where you have to go to the history to understand that. If you understand what is happening, then you cannot accept what is happening, because we are living in a century that we need to live not together, but we need to share the space. We need to give others what we have, to receive from others what they have, which is not always a material thing. Mm-hmm. So if we can live like this, why are we in the position to accept that someone from outside, it can be near us or it can be far from us, to try to order to make us to do what they think we should do? The same is happening with some of those European countries. So let's go to the history. What did they bring to America? Come on. So what are they thinking just to order and demanding from them there in Europe? What are we supposed to do? I am not here to talk on behalf of Venezuela, because they know how to defend themselves. Mm-hmm. What I have to say is that Cuba understands exactly what is happening behind all of the issues here. So there is a right-wing forces conducted like a Muppet from up there to try to dictate what we have to do. So, I mean, come on, let's be what we need to be as a human beings, and let us organize how we want to organize. If they have to do something inside Venezuela, it's a Venezuelan issue. It's not an American issue. It's not a Cuban issue. It's not a Belizean issue. So that's why we really appreciate that if every country not accept that kind of dictator, I mean, it is important. That's why we, in the case of the Cuban experience, we really appreciate how the Caribbean countries, those small countries, has been conducting in their policy toward Cuba. It was in 1972, when the blockade was maybe in the deepest depth, that the Caribbean countries said, listen, we are going to have diplomatic relations with Cuba. So since that time, we've been having a relation like brothers and sisters, so we can sharing what we have among us.
No, one of the things that we've learned, or one of the things I admire about the Cuban people from afar and in books, until I get on a plane or swim over there, is the resilience and the ingenuity of the Cuban people. I've heard so much about it and read so much about it. But what is the time frame you think before we can get Cuba back glistening and shining and beautiful the way it was before this tornado came and ripped?
I have to say that even that we have experienced that event, Cuba is shining in terms of, no, I'm not joking.
You're boosting with tourism right now.
No, but I'm not talking about that kind of situation. So every time you see someone from your own place helping you, even though that you don't know your name, it means that you feel comfortable. Yeah. Fidel said once that even though that Cuba is a socialist country, and people try to refer to Cuba as a communist country, so there's no country, there's not a people more closer to a Christianity in terms of belief, in terms of compassion, than the Cuban people. That's why this is the reason that we can share everything we have with people which are very different from us in terms of ideology or in terms of religion. See, so that kind of a spirit in the Cuban people. If you ask me in one word, I have to say that education has been the key issue here. So we've been educated, not even from Fidel Castro. I have to say that. Even from our founding fathers, we've been embraced in our brain that there is nothing more important to return solidarity. During our war against Spain during the colonial time, many people from the Caribbean, from Africa, from China, they came to Cuba to help. So the only thing that we are doing now is paying our debt with the humanity. So that when we receive that kind of expression of solidarity, we feel very comfortable, which means that we have received exactly what we've been doing in the last period.
Yeah, there are quite a few Belizeans who have to say thank you to Cuba for their education. And in fact, you have one of the best healthcare systems, so good in fact that our Prime Minister went for what is a very complex surgery in Cuba. What does it mean to you that there was a trust established that he would be able to get this very sensitive surgery in Cuba?
You mean, what is my perception about that?
Yeah.
If you ask that to a Cuban, it means that it is normal. So it's, I face a very important disease. I'm not supposed to say that, but I experienced an important disease in my life in the last 10 years. So the way I receive my treatment, which is an important one, not in a high standard hospital, but in a polyclinic which is near my home, it's something that we see that normal. You see what I mean? And we've met with some people that have been traveling to Cuba to get their medical treatment. And when they got back, and when we asked them, how was your surgery? So they didn't talk about surgery, but about nurses and doctors that have been surrounding them and expressing that solidarity. What do you need to do? So people close to you, watching what you are receiving, taking care of you, is been the most important. So it is, you ask me, it's a normal part of what you experience. It is not an exception. This is something that, what happened? No, it's something that we receive in daily basis.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to run out of time and also talk about another strange happening in Cuba. You had a meteor landing? There was a meteor that crashed into...
Yes, it was a piece of... this is something...
I saw the video of the light in the sky, and I said, maybe they're mistaking the sun, and then we saw pieces.
No, I was working at the embassy, and then I received a message from a friend who lived in Pinar del Rio, because that happened in Pinar del Rio. It's a beautiful landscape down there, and then they said, something happened down there, there's a meteor down there, it's landing down, and then, come on. What is happening?
You thought they were confused?
Yeah, but this is something that is been happening in many places. Cuba is. But anyhow, this is another thing that we are facing. We are not going to say that this is a U.S. fault. No, this is something that is happening around the world. We are not accustomed to that, but anyhow, this is something that happened.
Yeah. Are the Cuban people suspicious? Because I know Belizeans, if one natural disaster hit, and then an act of God, like a meteor hit, Belizeans, some of us would start to be very suspicious, to say, okay, well, this means something, whether something good or something bad. Are Cubans suspicious people? Do they have superstitions?
According to our experience in the last 60 years, we were supposed to have suspicions of everything because we have experienced a lot of things, right? Including diseases that have been killed our cattle or our harvest or so many things. But I have to say that we have also learned how not to be hysterical. So we wait and see, we analyze, we have a lot of people that are working, we're still working, but in certain levels of our conscience, we need to be suspicious because the world is just experiencing a lot of things that we don't have. We don't have an answer for that, but within the next 40 years, we don't know if there's some documents have been classified and then you see that happened, that something has been happening behind the scene and so on. So, but anyhow, now we're still working. We're in a very important moment of our recovery. I am optimistic, and I have to say that we have received a lot of solidarity, which is very important for the Cuban people. And again, we want to appreciate and we want to express our gratitude to the Belizean people and the Belizean institution for that.
Orestes, how can people help? What is the bank account number? How do they access it?
It's a long bank account number.
But if you tell us the bank and what name, that will be good enough.
Okay, Banco Financiero Internacional. Actually, I'll be sending that to the media houses.
Okay.
Banco Financiero Internacional, which is in Havana, of course, and this is an international bank. But, sorry for that, I have to say that people have been experiencing a lot of problem with that in different countries. Because it is not just that you go to a bank and you put the money and they will receive it. Due to the blockade, and this is a very clear circumstance, if you bank have a relation with a US bank, so it is impossible to make the transfer. So it means that people have been finding different ways. But anyhow, we've been receiving that. So as soon as someone calls us to that number that I mentioned, 610-1595, we will address it, how to do it, and how to express their solidarity in this kind of time. Okay?
Thank you for coming in and sharing
Thank you for what you guys.
the update as to what's happening in Cuba. And I think, there are probably a lot of people watching today who maybe are just finding out about the tornado, and I'm sure that they'll want to help as well. So hopefully they get in touch.
Thank you very much, and hope the next time we see you, we'll be down there in Belmopan to get a coffee.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Cuba.
No, first in Belmopan. Because I gotta provide you with a visa, and then but you gotta taste my coffee first.
Sign me up once there's coffee.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we're continuing talking about other cultures as we venture into the conversation about the Chinese New Year. So stay tuned.